And what's the objective of the session today? We're going to go over growth. Last time we talked about the steady state and the reason of the steady state because it's something we're going to use in a terminal value. So we talked about all of that. Remind you, we covered the cash flow, and then we talked about this number quite a lot. In fact, this number, it's the whole session last time. So when we went to steady state, it was really a nice exercise to learn about the Gordon equation. I wanted to remind you that you have a little calculator for that. And this one is really a different way to see the same things, but we extended it and we saw really something very similar to what we're going to use in your paper. Today's session, it's a very practical session, meaning how do we take all this theory and turn it to actual? What do I mean by that? If you look here at the introduction of growth,
Almost.
yeah,
The terminal value is the equity value or the total?
the terminal value, if I go back to this one, we have this naive discounted cash flow, and we say if this company is going to have a growth period and then a steady state, so we're really looking at the Gordon equation, or we use for what we call terminal value. This number represents the net present value of future cash flow from the year 6 up to infinity. So that's why we call it terminal value in the sense of by the end of the growth period. So that's why we call it terminal
No,
value.
I understand it, but which value is it? The equity value, the debt value? Because you in
it's in fact both of them together. Because we're looking at the cash flow of the whole company. Today, I'm going to, let me open it up, and we're going to use an actual case, and that will be really nice to implement it to a real company, not just theory. And that's why I made this simulation for you. Here we're going to use, I'm going to use Netflix today, but your exercise or your assignment, in a minute I'm answering your question, okay? I'm choosing Netflix. By the way, those are the stages you need to do in your assignment. I'm choosing the United States because it's established in the United States. And I'm going to do the valuation for 2019. I'm going to go over it today, but I will jump just to answer your question. What happened? I need to choose the, there's several industries, and the one that's most applicable for them, it's entertainment. So now when I go here, I will get a discounted cash flow for Netflix. And if you notice, this looks like Excel. Really does the work exactly like Excel. It's just online. And if you go into what we learned here, it's resemble the same things. We have a growth period. We have a growth period for Netflix. In a minute we will learn how to estimate that growth rate. Okay? And then we're not going to continue up to infinity. We're going to stop at the 6th year, and we're going to use a steady state. In the steady state, the EBIT going to be such and such in the 6th year and continue growing. And then we quantify that amount to be this terminal value. And in a minute, I'm going to show the calculation how we're going to do that in a real case. This one is just an example, on theoretical example in which we have some cash flow first year and it's growing at the rate of 6%. Here, Netflix, in a minute we will see the estimation, how do we get growth rate or 4.6. That's just the purpose of this session. But basically, it's very similar. What a terminal value represent? It's the value of the net cash flow from year 6 up to infinity. Is that answer the question?
Thank you.
Yeah, okay, good. Okay, so what are we going to do today? We're going to cover this session. We got to the growth. We covered all those two. Please see the question, the take a test. I think it's really good for preparation for the exam. This one, every chapter has its own, or every topic, I should say. And this one is the assignment for next time. I gave you 2 weeks. I'm going to cover everything that we have here that you need to do. I will cover it today. Okay? So by the end of the sessions today, everything in this session will be clear and you know what to do. Okay, what do we have in this session? We talked last time about the relationship between growth, reinvestment, and return on invested capital. And we said, in fact, we kind of represented the equation. If you recall, let me open another one so I can jump from one to another. By the way, you can open as many as you want in this application, which is nice. Last time when we looked at the golden equation, we had that G over ROIC. This is really the reinvestment rate. It's the percentage that I have to invest out of the net after tax EBIT that I have to invest in order for the company to grow at the rate of G. That's a reminder from last time. So the same, it's exactly really the same thing as G over ROIC equal to RIR, it's G equal to reinvestment rate times return on invested capital. That's just three kind of catch up of what we did last time. Now, how do I do it in real life? How do I do it in real life? So that's why we have this simulation. I started by choosing the company. By the way, to remind you, you can choose all the companies here, and then you can start typing your company, and just scroll until you find the company. You choose the country, which all those countries are in the US, and then you choose the year. The year is the last available annual report, which is 2019, since we are in 2020 now. When you choose those one, the simulation automatically pull all the data for you from the SEC. SEC, it's the body that monitoring the reporting on of the companies traded in any one of the exchanges in the US. So Netflix is one of them. And this one, you can pull really the data right from the SEC, which is very nice. Okay. Now, which data is really important that you really need? By the way, I recommend that you go over it a little bit. You see you have cash, goodwill, intangible assets, long-term liability, all of those revenue, EBIT, EBITDA. I collected here all the stuff that you will need for your paper, and in a nice way. If you see missing data, you can go and download the actual annual report. For example, 2012, there's some number missing. You won't need it because most of the data we use, it's only for the last 5 years. So you don't really have to go and fill those data, okay? But sorry, okay. So this is really a good collection of the data, save you a hell of a lot of time, and it's organized by balance sheet account, income statement account, and there's some useful ratios we will see in the future. Okay, so let's go and see what are the stuff that we will need. This is really the whole process in the calculation folder. We'll start from the very bottom. We're going to go over this one, we're going to go over this one, and we're going to go over the growth and cost of equity. And you'll see in your assignment, I asked you to do something I'm going to do in a minute. By the way, I did here for Netflix. If you look at the list of industries, this is the closest one. I couldn't really find another industry that is closer to that. What happens when you choose the industry? It automatically goes and check analyst forecast growth for the next 5 years on a yearly basis. What do I mean by that? Analyst report, or there's, in fact, it's a bunch of analysts, and the average of their forecast for the next 5 years, this is the average on a yearly basis, what's going to happen, what they think is going to happen in the entertainment industry. According to them, it's 4.6%. So this number, after I choose this one, it's automatically pick up the analyst forecast for the next 5 years. This is a number we're going to use. In fact, if you go now to valuation, you will see this is exactly this number. Is that clear, guys? Questions? Questions?
If
Where did
you
you get that analyst rating from?
Say again?
Where did you get that analyst, meaning where is that data pulled from that the analyst
in fact, that's the beautiful about this one. It's automatically pulled from Bloomberg and many other sources that I collected. I collected and put it in a database in a nice organized way for you. What you really need for now, at least for this course, that's a common practice that people do. By the way, we will talk later on, I think starting next week, on the meaning of cost of capital, and we will see also the average beta in the same industry. For now, we focused only on the growth.
Yeah, these numbers are just Netflix or just about the industry? The 2 point, all these
This
numbers
is
are.
for the entertainment industry.
What does it mean?
Excellent question, by the way.
Value, the estimated value is $281.
I can't hear you.
What the estimated value of the whole industry is? 281 what? 281.
For now, I'm only looking at the growth rate, what the analysts think it's going to be in the next 5 years. According to them, the forecast it's 4.6%. Now, that's what they think in the industry of entertainment. The question that you're probably hitting on is, this is really for Netflix? Is entertainment reflect what's going to happen to Netflix? That's a beautiful question. So therefore, we would like to see other way of looking at it. For example, how about going to the data? And let's see what happened really in the last 5 years. If I look at the revenue, okay? What was the growth rate in the last 5 years? See, the numbers have gone amazingly high. You know, in 2014, it was about, you had about 55 billion, okay? You have 55 billion. It went up to 201. So I did a little calculation here for you, and I expect you to do for your company. I took the revenue at 2019. It was, if you see here, it's 201,564. I took that number. That was 2019. This is the number in 2014. Let's see that. for the revenue. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5504. Everybody see that? This number,
Is it 20 billion, not 200 billion?
it's this is in US dollars, exactly. But what I care,
No, not 200 billion, it's 20 billion.
maybe I'm wrong, you're right. I think you are right. 1, 2, and 3, you're right. It's 20 billion, and here it's 5 billion. You're absolutely right. So everybody knows, by the way, how to calculate what is the growth rate on a yearly basis. How do we do that?
This year divided by last year minus 1.
Exactly, but if you have 5 years, so let's do it together, okay? I will redo the 26%. How did I get to the 29%? So here's the way you do it. You take the last year, which is 2019, divide this one by 5 years ago. That's really 1 plus the growth rate in 1 year times 5. So if I want to go backward, I have to take, not a square root, but really power of 5.
But is this only with constant growth or?
Yeah, assuming, yeah, beautiful. Assuming that every year I had the same growth rate. So if I take this one, power, I do that one power 1/5 because it's 5 years. That gives me 1 plus the yearly growth rate, okay? Because 1 plus the growth rate times 5 gives me that ratio. So this one is the result of this one. What happened? Why doesn't like me? I probably need to do here the following. Do equal. Okay. No, not something wrong. Yeah, that's fine. Now
Minus
from
1.
this one, I have to subtract 1, remember? And that's why, one more time. How did I get to the 1 plus 29? Let's rewrite it in our favorite notepad. One plus growth rate times G power 5. That will give me the ratio of the revenue in 2009. This is the ratio of 2019 divided by 2014. Okay, this ratio, that's what really given. I made the ratio first, and the ratio is supposed to be 1 plus G power 5. Therefore, if I want to find the G, I must, on the other side, just raise this one by the power 1/5. Okay, therefore, it's like moving this one to the other side. Now, this one is equal to 1 plus G. To find the G, I must subtract 1 from the other side. And that will be equal exactly to the G. And that's exactly what I did here. So to calculate the growth rate, or the average, as somebody mentioned correctly, that's the average growth rate, the yearly growth, average growth rate over 5 years. The way I calculate it, I take the ratio from 2019 over whatever in 2014. It's the 20 billion divided by 5.5 billion. All of that I take power fifth and then subtract 1, I get the growth rate. Is that clear, guys? Anybody?
Yes.
Good, good. If I ask you to do the same things for the same things for the EBIT, it will be very easy. You just look for the row of the EBIT. 2019, it was 2.6 billion, and in 14, let me just see the years here. In 2014, we had EBIT of, let's see, of 0.4 billion. So if I take 2.6 billion divide by 0.4 billion, I get 1 plus 45%. Subtracted 1, I get 45%. Okay, two ways that I see, well, on one hand, I see the revenue growing on average every year for 30%. It's unbelievable in the last 5 years. Pay attention, this is really based on previous year performance, okay? Analysts report based on what they think the future going to be, okay? Okay, so that's what analysts do, okay? On the other hand, on real life, what we see, the last 5 years were fabulous from growth rate of EBIT to Netflix. It was fabulous, 30% for the revenue, and analysts, on the other hand, forecasting that the next 5 years is going to be only 4.6, but this one is only for the entertainment industry, what is the main industry for this. I would say the main industry. They probably touch it. I think it's mostly entertainment. I wish they have other, but in your paper, I would really strongly recommend you go here and read the annual report again and try to see if there is other industry that they might be involved in. There is so many. There's broadcasting. Is broadcasting fall in this category or not? That's your job to decide based on, there's so many industries, okay? And that's your job to decide. There's so many sub-industries, and you need to find out which industry your company involved, okay? For now, I just chose entertainment, and that was 4.6. The question is, how would you solve this discrepancy between what analysts saying, which seems quite reasonable for a regular company, but Netflix has such a fabulous performance in the last 5 years. So what is going to happen in the next 5 years to Netflix? On one hand, the analyst saying the future for the entertainment going to be 4.6. The previous 5 years saying that Netflix is really growing like crazy. So which number should I use for the growth rate for the next 5 years for Netflix? Anybody has suggestions or thinking? What do you say?
Maybe an adjusted version of their revenue growth, because at the end of the day, you're right, entertainment is not a good category for Netflix. It's probably better described as, streaming, and there are a lot of companies that operate in that space. So 4.6 is low.
Beautiful. So this is a really good example. I agree. This is a good example that, you can't really just say, they're close to entertainment, so let's just take 4.6. I really should see, I can't really ignore this company is really a leading company in a lot of stuff, and their past does reflect to a big extent to what's going to happen in the next 5 years. So I really should look at the streaming industry and deeper and look at the other industries in the list here, and maybe I can find something that make more sense and try to use my common sense in making my decision. So what I did here in the simulation, although let's say if for example, if I decide that they are in two sub-industries. By the way, this is going to allow you to do a weighted average. So I'm just making it up. I just will use something that close enough, but doesn't have to be broadcasting. Not really. Let's see if there is a streaming. Streaming is really the right one here. I don't know if they have, if I see here streaming. No, I don't. Telecom, it's not really. So it's a little hard. Let's just for a second, broadcasting. It's not really is, but no, it's even lower. Doesn't make any sense. No, I wouldn't use that. Okay, but
That list of
this is for a main, very common breakdown of the industries done by Pharma and Francine as the major 46. I think there are subcategories of industries commonly used in finance. And I don't really see something that really fall the right way for a company like Netflix. I just for demonstration purposes only, not that it's the right one, let's do broadcasting. I just wanted to explain how this one works. If you finally find the two industry or three industries, you just you look at the annual report and you see what their revenue from each, I'm just making it up, from every segment of those industries, okay? And then he automatically will do a weighted average. And this number, by the way, automatically being adjusted and plugged here automatically for you. In this case, I don't really think broadcasting is the right one, so I will delete it, okay? And now I'm stayed with one. And I
I'm
can
confused.
live
But
with
why
both.
would you? I understand that, like, you could say Netflix could fall into entertainment, it could fall into broadcasting, streaming, etc. But when would you have like the separate revenues? Like, I understand weighted average, but why would you have separate revenues?
Well, in fact, the truth of the matter, it doesn't really do its revenue. There is a ratio per industry of enterprise value to revenue. So it's really doing it on enterprise value as an estimator. We will learn about relative valuation. So it says for entity value over sales, that's the way it's valuing in that specific industry, the value of that segment. So I didn't want really to dive into it. So it's not exactly by sales, it's by estimator of the market value of that segment based on the revenue, okay? But it does a weighted average for those industries, and that's the one that is recommending to use.
No, I'm just saying, if you decided to have two industries, which revenues would go into, like, what?
Why do you get those numbers?
Separate two revenues.
You know, if you go into the annual report, if a company is involved in more than one industry, by the accounting rules, they must report how much is the revenue from every industry. And that's the place you take the revenue. Okay,
Right.
it will be a footnote in the financial statement.
Maybe you said this before, but what if I don't see my company's industry in the list? It's here.
It will make it a little harder. You can just ignore that number altogether. And that's why I did it the following. Especially in this case, let's go back let's just go back. Here we're getting, according to the industry, it's 4.6. We looked at this Excel, and I agreed with the guy that said, well, I really have to look at adjusted numbers of those one. So I probably will not live with 4.6, definitely not for Netflix. So I can change it manually. I would say it's about 25, make more sense. And I will try to substantiate it as much as I can based on reading, based on forecast about analysts saying specifically about Netflix and not just the industry in which it is. And then I will try to substantiate when I change the number here, it's like I say, okay, I have seen this one for the industry, but it seems to me extremely low, but I will have to give a good explanation on why I'm using 25%, or another number. It will be really hard to argue with me if I show that the past was 30% based on revenue, 45% based on EBIT. It would be really hard to argue with me. Does that make sense? Yes, guys? Hello?
Not so much. Why do you choose 25?
Well, I just made it up. Honestly, you're right. That's what I said. I have to substantiate it. According to those numbers, if I used even 29 or 30%, I can say, well, I used here 30% because it's the lower I got from the two. That will be okay, but later on we will see when we'll use simulator, and we will see what the range, even if I might make a mistake here, at least I can do some simulator and see how wrong can I get by my assumptions. But as I said, I will have to substantiate it by more reading about the company. But at least I have those two numbers to look at. So I definitely will not go below 4.6, but I definitely will not go above 45. So at least those two we can agree. Any number in between will be questionable. And I will try to find a number between, I most likely will not go above 30, and I will try to substantiate the number between those two ones based on reading about Netflix specifically. So I might end up writing here 25%, but I will have to write really a nice explanation. Why did I choose that number? And what does it mean, a good writing? Good writing, it means that nobody can argue with me that it's hard to find a better number. Not that I say, well, definitely that's what I think it's going to go. One, nobody really knows what's going to happen in the next 5 years, but at least I have a good reason or a good explanation why I chose 25. Okay? So, and in a minute we will see what happened to the valuation between 25. Here, just an example. How much really I am wrong leaving everything else the same if this is 25 or it is 30. See, the intrinsic valuation, the bottom line, we'll learn the rest later on, but it's 106. If I raise that to 30, is that going to make a big change? Well, a big change is also relative. So it's $2. It's a lot, but it's not, it's still far away from what it is being traded for. So my error, it's within $2 per share. Okay, if I go to the 20, that's most likely will be $2 even less. Okay, so I'm coming down to 2 or 2. I did something really nice. If you put, let's say 25, and that's a simulator, and I talk about it later on in the course. What is the effect of the different, here we go, short-term growth? Okay, it's built up a simulator around the 25, and that tells me how much the value might be affected. But I will talk about it much more toward the end of the part of intrinsic valuation. I'm just showing you that all those assumptions, you never get the right number because nobody knows the right number, but at least you know what might be your mistake or what are the range that your assumption here has effect. Okay? Is that helping? It certainly is. Why? That's why valuation is extremely hard, very, very hard topic to do, because really any number you will choose, somebody will attack you. You just always will have the best explanation saying, I can't find a better number. Can you give me a better number? And usually you're in a good shape if nobody can defend a different number better than you. This one we covered, and then I talked about how can you use the industry. This one we talked about last time, the relationship between growth, return on invested capital, and reinvestment rate. We talked about, this is in fact reiterating the same equation here. We can go and look at it in a different way, by the way. Let's look at let's look at calculation. We'll go down to the very bottom here. Estimate of return on invested capital. Anybody wants to suggest how to estimate that number in real life? Go ahead, guys.
Which number, Amo?
Return on invested capital. We used it so much. We used it here. Is that right? And now I say, well, here is Netflix. Can you tell me what is the return on invested capital for Netflix? Here is the
Growth
data.
by IR.
Here is the data. I can go here. And here we go. Tell me what to do. Anybody has an idea?
Growth divided by RIR.
Say again?
Growth
Yeah,
divided by
but I don't know the
IR.
growth yet. That's what is the definition of return on invested capital? First of all, I need to know the invested capital. The invested capital is capital expenditure divided by total asset. That's one way. Is that right? Is that right? Everybody agree?
You say so.
So another way I can see return on invested capital, sorry, that's reinvestment rate. If I look at return on invested capital, is taking operating income after taxes. That's basically the EBIT times 1 minus T. Or I take the actual, this is the actual in the financial statement of the EBIT after taxes. And then I would take the total long-term debt. By the way, this one I just left it for you. I can really remove it. We don't really use those two. This is the one we use. It's long-term debt plus equity. It is invested capital. Those two together, it's invested capital. So if I go back to my Excel.
Amos, could you please repeat that again?
Yeah, I'm going to show it also in the Excel. Okay, yeah. I'm using, first of all, this one plus this one, meaning total long-term debt plus stockholders' equity. That's the invested capital.
What's the total for all the years?
What I did, I did something really cool here, just to get a sense if this is really sensitive to how many years I'm taking. So the default, I'm using 5 years. But if you change this one to 4, it will do the average on 4 years, okay? Sorry, thank you. This didn't really change much. I can do what happened the last 3 years. Wow, it's even higher. 2 years, the last 2 years, it's around 8.5. The last year, it's 8.8. In fact, I'm looking that ROIR really for 5 years, it's a low estimate because if I take a shorter period or the last couple years or last year, return on invested capital is even higher. But before I go to that deeply, I will just say how I do the calculation. Let's say I put 5 here, okay? When I type 5 here, I take the sum of the last 5 years. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 years. I take all the operating income after taxes, sum them up. I take all the long-term debt plus all the stockholders' equity. Those together, I add this one plus this one. That's the invested capital. This one plus this one, it's the invested capital. And then this is net operating profit after adjusted taxes. That's the number that it's the income or the profit after taxes divided by the invested capital, give me 7.26 when I do it over 5 years. Now we know that return on invested capital, it's a driver for value. So that number is an important number. By the way, the simulation automatically put it right here for you. So if you look at this number comes right from here. Now the other 9 things is that if you change this one to 3 years, you notice that it's really even higher. That means we're looking at a company that as time goes by, in fact, the return on invested capital is even higher. Meaning this company has really put a good potential for growth, okay? So I might really just use the last 3 years instead of, and you see this is adjusted automatically, which is a really nice feature. So this one, I probably will go for a company like Netflix. I will use the last 3 years and not the last 5 years because information from 5 years is really less relevant to the future than the last 3 years, especially for a company like Netflix. Does that make sense, guys?
For the companies that we do, how do we know how many years to do?
That's exactly, it's really not, there's no real answer for it. It's common to start with 5 years, like I put the default, okay? But, you know, when I look at Netflix and I'm playing with this number, I put 4 years, I see it's went up. Is that right? I put 3 years.
Sorry, Amos, can you repeat what you said because my internet went out and I couldn't hear you?
No problem. I said the default, it's usually common to look at 5 years. But is 5 years reflect the true future return on invested capital for a company like Netflix? There's no right answer. There's no one that can really write a right answer because no such a things. You know, none of us is really knowing what's going to happen in the future. But when I'm looking at a company in which the revenue is growing so fast and the EBIT is growing so fast, and we know that one of the drivers is return on invested capital, I will tend to check what happened in the last 3 years. Maybe this is probably will be a better reflection of what's the future going to lead. So I most likely will go with 8.16, okay? Okay, so there is no real book answer or theory how many years you should use, but you most likely will say, well, for Netflix, most likely the return on investment going to continue. Knowing the industry, we know they really have a lot of niche stuff, their expansion around the world, and that's why the first assignment, knowing your company is extremely important, because you can't just take 5 years and this is the number, okay? Hello?
Great, thank you.
Okay, good. Okay, so we covered another things, return on invested capital. So far, let's sum up. We kind of looked at what analyst has to say. Their growth rate is 4.6. We did our calculation, looking at the growth based on revenue, based on EBIT. We came to about 4.6, around 5, and that's big difference between the two. And then we say, okay, let's look at it in a different way. Let's look at the ROIC. Then we say, okay, if ROIC is 7.6, what does it really mean, okay, to how much the company has to invest in order to keep even a growth rate of 4.6? I will take 4.6 divided by 7.6. I'm getting that Netflix has to keep 63% of their revenue or their operating income after tax in order to keep such a growth. Although this is not a substantial number, but they will have to keep about 63%. Let's go back to here. By the way, it does the calculation for you automatically. If I go back and I put the 4.6 here, and I put 8.76, or if I go back, this is really the nice things about this simulation. If you go back and you go back to 5 years, and then you should play with it and get a sensible numbers. So if you take 4.6 divided by 7.26, you get 63%. That's the way I did the calculation here in Excel, so you can really understand how I got that. This number is 4.6 divided by 7.826. Okay? That's the way
So
we
you're
get this
using
number.
4.6%, not like the 25%?
Oh, hold a second. Very good. Very, very good. And now, who asked that? What's your name?
Michael.
Michael. Excellent. Now I'm going to give you a challenge. Okay? I love the question. In fact, you're ahead of me in a couple of sentences. Let's change 1 to 25. Oh, wow. What is the reinvestment rate? This is 344%. Can you explain what it means? By the way, we're really dealing with the real numbers. This is not like just a classroom example. This is Netflix. If I assume that the growth rate of this company is going to be 25%, and I see that there it, you know what? Let's even move this one. Let's go back here. Change that to 3 years. By the way, he will overwrite me probably. Yeah, he will overwrite me. 25. Okay. I even changed that to 3 years. I'm getting about 300%. What the meaning of that 306%? Michael, what do you think? You can be wrong. Don't be worried. You know, it's all an easy stuff.
They would have to invest the 344% in order to keep their growth.
Correct. That means if they're making whatever revenue, EBIT after taxes, they have to keep 3 times of that. So where that money will come from? You know, I can keep the profit. Is that right?
Investors.
But I have to really keep more than my profit, isn't it? Isn't that what it means?
Would
As
they have
long
to
as
take
this is-
that,
you know,
that 3
let's go
times
here.
their
Let's
income?
put here 8%. In order to go up by 8%, really it means that ROIC has to be equal to the growth. Okay? If this is equal, it means my reinvestment is really all my profit has to go to reinvestment. So if I'm talking about 25, that means I have to raise money. Otherwise, I won't grow in that percentage. And Netflix do raise money. You can see that. Okay? And that's really very interesting phenomena, which could be puzzle for you. How can the reinvestment will be higher than the EBIT? You know, it's kind of like doesn't make sense. It does, because if I'm assuming they are growing like crazy, the income they are making not increasing the assets enough to explain that such a growth. And the only way you can think about it is by acquisition involving issuing equity or issuing debt. That's a little subtle point, okay? For your paper, I won't make your life hard. If you keep here 4.6, I won't kill you. I really won't. But please do make some explanation and talk about it. That's the key beautiful part. Show that you really understand how hard it is to do valuation. And that's really, you know, I have, I think, almost 35 years experience. And the beauty here, that any numbers you use in this Excel, you want to defend. I most likely will use here between 20, 25, but I will have to spend more time, which I did not have. So if I put 25 here, I will be a little quiet than put 4.6, but I will definitely spend minimum having one of my assistant or two exploring many other things to substantiate the number I'm going to put here, and then give a good example or a good explanation of what that means. Because if I'm sitting in court and testifying about the valuation, somebody will ask, how come it's more than 100%? And I will have to have a really good answer. Okay? Let's go back to the classical as if we believe the analyst and put it back and move on. So I hope this is really kind of opening your eyes a little bit. Real life, it's even harder than the theory. Theory is beautiful, but real life is even harder. Let's go a little bit and talk about the steady state. How do I do the calculation in the steady state? Which numbers do I need in the steady state? First of all, what should I use as the growth rate for the steady state? If you say, here I have the number 2. Anybody wants to guess what might be a sensible assumption for growth rate in the steady state? And remember, steady state means to the infinity. It's like this company going to live forever. Anybody? What do you say? Volunteer, guys? Hello? Anybody? Michael?
Yeah.
Just
not
guess.
sure, not sure. That's confusing. Not sure.
If I told you it's going to be 10%, will you be happy with it or will you be suspicious?
It's gonna be less than 4%.
Yeah, why did you put 4%? By the way, it's not a bad number.
4.6% is a short term, like probably long term.
It should be lower, you're right. But how about if I tell you the economy or economy is saying the growth rate in America in the next several years is going to be about 2%. Or you say, you know, history have taught us that growth rate of a country is not more than 2, top 3%. Could a company up to infinity be more than that? That doesn't make any sense. Why? Second is an exercise. If the whole economy grow by 2% and your company is growing by 3%, after 100 years, the whole economy will be only your company. Okay? So assuming something that is different than the growth rate of the economy will be nonsense, because we're using golden equation, and in the golden equation, it's assuming infinity. So any assumption that will be using growth rate higher than the growth rate of the GDP will be almost nonsense. And therefore, in real life, what people usually use, it's the growth rate of the economy. I gave you a link here. If you click on it, it shows you some estimate of what the economy was in the last several, I think it's several years or months, several years. That's what was. Most of them around 2.5 in the last year, all what came out, and 3.1, it's the highest here. Here it was 1.1. So assuming 2%, it's not a bad idea for a long run. Just look at what people expecting for next year to be just because of the corona. So if you look on average to infinity, which is kind of almost absurd exercise, but you don't really have a better way to do it. So assuming and be conservative of 2%, it's probably very reasonable assumption, and that's what commonly used in real life. That's why I put 2% here. So if you will be able to convince me to use 2.1, I won't argue with you. But if you put here 4%, I most likely will doubt it. Or if you put 5%, okay? But if
Almost
you be around
also
the
apply if you're doing
2%,
a multinational company.
say again?
Does this also apply if we're doing a multinational company?
Correct. Well, that's a beautiful question. Usually when you say, theoretically at least, you would like the growth rate of the world. And frankly, you won't get much difference in practice because we'll see the sensitivity of those numbers. But you're absolutely right. If it's a multinational company working in, let's say, in 5 major countries, I probably will do a weighted average. Or I will use region. Let's say if I have a country that works, many countries in South America, I will take the average of the region of South America. So you're hitting on a very good point, and the sky is the limit of how precise you can get. Whatever you will do, you want to substantiate. 2% will not be too bad, and I will show you again something we did before. Based on those numbers, the valuation now it's 79. Okay, if I change that to 2.1, it will have an effect, but is it substantial? I didn't change it too much. If I move that to 2.5, that's how much is that? Not too bad, not too substantial. Going above 2.5 would be a little hard to justify, really, even if you look at the multinational. If you go to 1.5, which some people will argue today because the economy is bad, who knows what's going to happen, still, you're not that far. So your valuation, it is sensitive to that number, but it's not a killing number that if I said the value is 79, and people are not going to kill me, So being around 2, it's probably not a bad assumption. Moreover, we will see when I will talk about simulation, how do I substantiate that my assumption weren't too bad after all, okay? But I like your question. We'll talk about, in fact, I will talk even about how about the risk when we talk about cost of capital when I operate in several countries versus just operating in the US. So please repeat your question when we get there, because it has a meaning also for risk, or which risk affect cost of capital. Beautiful. More questions, guys? Hello? It's so hard teaching in the Zoom. I don't see your faces, so I don't know if I was clear. Can anybody say yes, no? I know the name of Michael, so Michael,
Almost,
is
I
that
wanted
clear?
to ask you another question.
Sure, go ahead.
More of a logistic question. So we can't download the syllabus on Moodle for whatever reason.
What can't you download?
We can't download the syllabus. It won't download.
Yeah, I noticed that. It really is a problem, but let me tell you what, I think I have the syllabus here. For
The
some
syllabus is
reason,
also
they
on
got
Academy
stuck.
TV and
No, I think, and the one that you can download, it's for the last year. I did look into it, and I asked for the computer department to check why the syllabus, you can't download it. In any case, I think I put it here, just in case. Yeah, it is right here. And by the way, the most important thing is about the grade. So the exam is 70%, and the paper is, or the group project is 30%. And then this is the topics we're going to cover. But you should be able to download it from the Moodle. I did ask the computer department, please shoot me another email. I will check with them again today, okay?
Okay. And
Because
so
I
in
think
this,
somebody have asked that earlier, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I did look into it, and they haven't given me an answer. So I will double check again for them.
I just wanted to check also because this list I see has all the readings from the textbook that we'll need too, right? Because I think that'll help some of us who are lost to have that additional.
I'm saying, in fact, I put the reading, I put the assignment also on the Moodle. By the way, if you look at the assignment of today that I uploaded for 2 weeks from now, this one it's also in the Moodle. Okay, and I put the due date. I put the due date here, and the due date is also And to do that is also on the model. I didn't put the reading yet. That will be, I'm going to post it for next week, okay? So I don't know if I put it here or I put it for next week. I think I put it for next week. I don't recall. Yeah. You don't really have a reading. The first two chapters cover nicely all the material so far. For the next one, I did ask you to start reading chapter 3. So, and I will put this one also on the Moodle, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Good. So the nice, if you notice, this is probably the only website that you will see that you barely use Excel. Did you notice? We're going to cover this one next week. This is another, it used to be, everything used to be Excel. And I did everything simulation. The Excel is history. It's supposed to be history. It sounds ridiculous after everybody talks to you about Excel. And honestly, for many years, this was my favorite tool. And after you study Python or you study a little more advanced programming, this is a beautiful component, by the way. This is just something you can build, and it's online. You will see. This is a question from an exam. By the way, we're ready for a beautiful questions, and it's a really beautiful. I thought a lot writing these questions, and this is what's from the exam. One of the exams I gave several years ago, I many times repeated, and now you can just practice online, which is nice. And you have all the equations here telling you how the solution evolved, and you don't have to go and check Excel, and you don't know where you put the Excel, and here you never forget it's right there. This is something you cannot do in Moodle. I wish I could, okay? And that's the only reason why I developed this startup. This startup designed just to give you really online, real life data like we did with Netflix. You know, this is not a trivial exercise to do with Excel. You know, it will take you a hell of a lot of time to build it up. By the way, I used to do that, and this is 10 times nicer. See the beauty when you go and change in the calculation, you want to check it on 3 years instead of 5 years. That's a really nice one. Okay, that's will be a little harder every time you'll have to adjust in Excel. You'll waste a lot of time. And you're a generation that, in my opinion, in high school, they should teach you a programming language, at least something like Python, JavaScript, or whatever. But you're a new generation that, in my opinion, you should invest the time. It will go along with you for the rest of your life. Anyway, let's go back. I'll put the 5 here just for the example because this is the common assumption. But as I said, Netflix I probably will use 3 years. There's another last topic that I do want to cover that has to do also with your assignment. It's what do we do with taxes? We talked about, okay, let's summarize first, because this is a small topic, we'll cover it in a minute. I would just really want to sum up. We try to estimate growth for the next 5 years. We said we can use analyst forecast based on the industries the company is involved in. We can use just the growth rate on specific numbers. Most used is EBIT. Sometimes some people use EBITDA, if you know what it is, and revenue. We came up to really totally different numbers. Then we said we have to explore about the company. As somebody has said correctly before, maybe I have to dive into streaming industry and find more information more relevant to specific industry that Netflix is in, or just about Netflix itself, okay? Read their financial, look at their strategy, and come up and substantiate my number about a number that it's in this range. And unfortunately, this is really a huge difference. The second things we talked about that give us, how do I estimate return on invested capital? We said we take net operating profit after taxes, mean EBIT times 1 minus T. In fact, in real life, you look at the annual report and you take the operating income after tax. Then you take the capital expenditure, the invested capital, sorry. The invested capital is the sum of long-term debt plus stockholders' equity. I take this one, divide by this one, I get an estimate to ROIC. Then we said, okay, if I know this number and I know this number, just take this one, divide by this, that will be my estimate for reinvestment rate, okay? Then we talked about long-term. How do we use, which assumption I should use for growth rate in the long run? And we said that the one that makes sense, it's more or less expected growth rate for the GDP, because any other number, it means that this company is going to blow to such a size relative to the whole economy to be the only company in the world. Okay, you can really play with it and you can convince yourself that it's true. If I have the whole economy growing 2%, my company growing 3%, after 100 years, my company will be the only company in the industry, okay? That's about growth. So the assumption is usually it's how much is the GDP going to grow in the long run. So I will look some articles, I will look on estimate like this one, I give you a link. That's what we did so far. The next questions that relevant before even I get to the taxes, okay, what is the return on invested capital in the long run? Anybody wants to guess? I'm just really going ahead of myself because we will revisit this question again. Anybody wants to try to guess what should I assume the return on invested capital? Let's go here. You know, if we look at the valuation, we need to use here the return on invested capital. What do you think is sensible? This one we made sense. What is a sensible assumption should be in the long run? Anybody? Anybody? Let me help you out. If you can go and borrow from the bank, and the bank will give you a loan, and you have to pay only 4% interest rate, and you assume that you're going to make 5% on average every year forever, what will you do?
So it should be higher than our walk.
It shouldn't, exactly. If it is a
Right.
little bit higher
No, it
than the
should.
WACC, it's like going to the bank, get something in 4%, I make 5%, in 100 years, my family is the richest family in the world. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
So anything that the ROIC will be higher than the WACC will not be any sensible or different. So it's common to assume in the long run that the return on invested capital it's equal to the WACC. That's why you see this one we haven't studied. That's the topic starting next week. Okay, we'll talk about the component of the WACC and we'll estimate the WACC. But for now, at least, we can say in the long run, the growth, the return on invested capital shouldn't be more than the WACC, because any other assumption would say, oh, I'm going to be the richest company in the world in 100 years, or I'm going to vanish relative to all the economy because I would just lose money. Okay? So those two really are just because of the assumption we're talking about infinite horizon, which limiting to which assumptions or which numbers we can really use. And those are the two most commonly used in real life, okay? Knowing those two numbers, the same as we did here, this divide by this give me the reinvestment rate in the short term. This one, this divide by this give me what should be the reinvestment rate in the long run, meaning 46% the company is going to reinvest. Okay?
Almost, does this have to do with value creation? Because if ROIC is greater than WACC, then value should be created, right?
Correct. But you can't really create value forever because companies get to maturity. You're really heading, by the way, the book has a good topic on value creation, or what is known as economics value created. Some call it economics value added. I don't emphasize it in this course because frankly, by knowing that ROIC higher than WACC, you create value. Now, many times it's useful for, stimulate packages for managers, and economics value creating doesn't really have any conceptual new stuff, but it's a very good measure to measure performance of managers. And that's really not exactly right into the valuation of the company as much as how to compensate manager for creating a value. But it's a beautiful concept. I really do encourage you to read it in the book. It talks about it as well.
Okay, thank you.
By the way, I had the privilege to, that was many years ago. The guy that developed the concept called Stern is from MIT. And he used to, I don't know where he works today, an analysis group in Boston. I used to work in Lexicon, and I worked against him in a valuation case. And in the beginning, I got really scared because I was just out of my PhD, and he was a well-known person. And fortunately, I knew the computer better than him, so I won the case. But he's a very smart guy, and that's a really interesting way of, I like his way of defining the economics value creation. Very bright guy. So I had the privilege to work against him, and fortunately it works for me, but he's a brilliant guy, okay? That's a beautiful concept. Read it in the book. It's a beautiful concept. I have a business simulation software, and I do emphasize it's there to measure the performance of the groups in creating value for the company. Okay, beautiful. Thank you for the question. It's a beautiful question. So if you noticed, we already have all those 6 covered. EBIT comes directly from here. We look at the EBIT. Right, these numbers, is that right? This number, right, come right here. Well, I'm using here the EBIT as a starting point of what I think the valuation of what's going to happen in the next few years. So I'm taking the EBIT of 2019 and using the 4.6 in the short term, and then I'm using 2% in the steady state. Then I'm using net capital expenditure, okay? Then I have the taxes, of course. Taxes is, by the way, taxes, which tax should I use? Effective tax rate or marginal tax rate? What's the difference? And that's the last topic for today, for the next 4 or 5 minutes. If you go into the calculation, I did in the bottom, it does automatically the actual, when you say effective, you really mean what was the actual tax rate the company has paid. And if you look at the actual taxes over the 5 years, you look at the operating income, which is another word for EBIT. You take this one, divide by this. Usually it's a good practice to do is to sum the last 5 years, because you see some years are even negative. Some years are very high. So you want to get some kind of a long average. By the way, this is different than doing you divide first and then take the average. Don't do that. That will have a big variance. It's usually common to take the sum of the numerator, the sum of the denominator, and you divide one by the other one, and the estimate, it's only 4%, believe it or not. That's for Netflix. One thing you can say, it did go up in the last couple of years. They had a lot of losses probably, okay, or accumulated or accounting losses in 2017. You can look by changing this one, if I move it to 2 years, in the last 2 years, they paid 5%. Let's look at the last year, 7.5. most likely they will start paying more taxes, okay? Because the company is maturing more. But if I look at the 5 years, on average, they paid only 4%. While, by the way, if you know a little bit what happened in the US, until Trump was elected, the tax rate touched even 35%. For them paying only 4%, it's amazing. Is that going to be forever? Is that possible? The answer is no. Because if I look at the infinity, all the accounting benefits of manipulating numbers or getting incentives cannot last forever. Therefore, when we do the tax calculation for the growth period, we use the effective tax rate. When we do for the steady state, to do this number, okay, we take the 21%. So this number is 21% of the EBIT, okay, of the steady state. On the other hand, this number is only 4% of the EBIT in 2024. Same things for all the other years. So for the growth period, we use the effective tax rate, and for the steady state, we use the marginal tax rate. Marginal tax rate is really what we call many times statutory tax rate or regulatory tax rate. This is the marginal corporate tax rate. It's not the individual tax rate, which is totally different topic, a different tax. It really goes on individuals. And this one we talk about corporate tax rate. And it's in the US, it's 21 years. By the way, this number came automatically when you chose the country. When you chose the country, it's automatically pulled for that country the tax rate. If you use another country, let's say Israel, it will pull, in Israel, it is 23%, okay? And this is really nice because you got all this database. You don't really have to look it up yourself. That's a lot of work. That's a hard course by itself already. And as you change that, the whole thing's change accordingly.
Amos, do we have an assignment due next week?
Not next, you had for the 25th. Let me say what the assignment for 2 weeks from now. I posted it here. By the way, the beauty about this assignment, it's really review of what we covered today, really almost everything we covered today. If I implemented it on Netflix, you should do the same things as I just did in the session today for your company. Which company do you have, by the way? Which company are you using?
Abvai.
Let's see if we can find it. I mentioned many times, if you're smart, make sure the company will be here. How do you spell it? A-D-V?
A-B-B. It's like one of the first ones.
A-B. Can you see it?
No, it's a little lower. A-B-B-V-I-E. Yeah, that one.
Okay, beautiful. Okay, now I'm going to choose the country. Just imagine how much time you had to spend to get all this data, which is bingo. Now you got the whole data for this company. That's pretty cool, isn't it? By the way, I have a lot of investment companies, that I'm giving them to use this framework. They use a lot of other things that you don't have in here. But here you got all the data, really. If you go into the calculation, and here we go. You just have to, which industries it's in, do you know?
Pharmaceutical.
Pharmaceutical. Let's see, hold a second. I think it's pharmaceutical and drug. Here it is. Most likely this is the one. But look, if you have only pharmacy, I think this is the only one. It's like Teva. Okay? Growth rate expected only 4%. The beta we'll talk about next week. So you got that one already. Those one already calculated for you, but we will learn how it does it next week. Okay? This one you have, and you have really your homework is right there. ROIC, it's 15%. Okay? And you got effective tax rate almost 13%. And then
we
you can
post the
go here.
assignment. We do it on
Most
Excel.
of the numbers already calculated for you. Just you have to have a nice discussion. Fair enough?
Where
Yeah,
do you
thank
do
you
the
very
assignment? Like you just do it, or do you have to turn something in?
Really, I would like you to follow the instruction, do it. And even if you do it, please write a nice description. And that one, just think about it, another chapter you want to put in your final paper, dealing with growth, return on invested capital, taxes in the short term and long term. You want to have that chapter. Prepare it and be ready for, so when you get toward the end of the semester, you just modify it according and make it as a nice paper. Okay? Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Amos.
Thank
Have
you.
a good one.
Thank you, Amos.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.